Once you understand that your brain always operates in two different modes, then you can always realize, okay, in which mode am I currently? Am I currently in TPN? And if I'm TPN, am I overworking? Because what happens is, if you are too long in TPN, what you will face is eventually called a burnout. And this is, I assume, something that you guys face a lot or very often, because that's something that I face very often. And so the reason is because essentially you are in overdrive. You are constantly on TPN, you're constantly solving a problem, you're constantly being logical, you're constantly working on your business or assignment, and eventually you reach out or reach a specific burnout. And the way burnout works in the brain is that there's a specific allostatic load. So imagine that something as a brain fuel, and that you have basically maximized your brain fuel, and your brain doesn't have enough space to process other stuff. And so that's essentially a burnout. And so when you are in burnout, then you realize, okay, well, now it's time for me to reevaluate. Now it's time for me to wind down. And so then you basically transition into default mode network. And default mode network is where active recovery happens. This is where you are, again, meditating. This is where you are relaxing. This is where you are essentially taking yourself off, some time off, to reflect on your decisions, on what you made here, right? And so understand that if you're depressed, anxious, DMN, try to transition to TPN. If you're if you're overworked, burned out, then transition back to DMN. So understand that for now. The third and last, but not least, of the three principles is Maslow's hierarchy. And so this is something that you guys have learned in school, because Maslow's hierarchy is basically a very simple assessment of how we humans thrive in the socio-dominance hierarchy. And so socio-dominance hierarchy is just a very complex or heavy word of saying on how we basically position ourselves in society. And so I'm not sure if you can see this part, but the Maslow's hierarchy is basically a triangle that has multiple layers. But for now, we're just going to focus on the first two layers. And the first layer is the basic needs, and the second layer is the psychological needs. Excuse me for my writing, guys. So I want you to understand that according to Maslow's hierarchy, you're unable to elevate or go to the next level without fully completing the layer that you're currently in. And I repeat that, you are unable to transcend to the next level without completing the first level. And so what is the first level? The first level is your basic needs. And in today's world, for the majority of you guys, unless you live in a really third world country or in a place that you have rough conditions, your basic needs to most extent is already satisfied. Basic needs include sleep, food, shelter, for example. Oh no, shelter is psychological needs. Basic needs such as food, drink, hygiene, stuff like that. And so in the modern world, the basic needs is already completed. And so once you have understood your basic needs, then you transition into the second need. Those are psychological needs. Psychological needs does include family, moral support, feeling welcome in your society, feeling part of a community, a clan. And so I want you guys to understand that before you go into the next layers of Maslow's hierarchy, before you, for example, try to settle your problems with your family or specific issues regarding, psychological needs, then you have to satisfy your basic needs. And it sounds cliche, but that is something that I took a long time to figure out, and that's essentially because I've never really successfully satisfied my basic needs. And it sounds simple, like satisfying food and sleep, but it's crazy that I see that a lot of people, myself included nowadays, are unable to satisfy the basic needs such as sleep properly. Honestly, sometimes I don't get enough sleep, and sometimes I eat garbage. And that's a problem, because how am I able, right, according to Maslow's hierarchy, how am I able to satisfy my psychological needs if I'm unable to get my sleep intact, or am I able to get my food intact, or I'm able to provide, shelter and stuff like that? How am I able to do that, right? How am I able to solve my psychological needs if I'm unable to solve the basic needs? And so if you're, again, anxious, depressed, or purposeless in this world, I promise you, satisfy the first two layers of Maslow's hierarchy. Firstly, satisfy your basic needs. Make sure you get right enough time of sleep, you eat well, you have good, at least to some extent, good hygiene, good shelter, and then move on to your psychological needs. Make sure that you belong to a community, that you have good relationship to your family and friends, that you feel at least psychologically sound, and then you can transition to the third and fourth layer where we talk about transcendence, work, and paying bills, and etc. etc. And so, with that being said, guys, I hope that you understand these three principles of the universe, because once you understood this, and this is what the millionaires use all the time, then you will realize, aha, okay, my life has more meaning, so now I can focus on things that actually matter. If you like this, subscribe.